Speaking of games, you are well into Dark Potential now.
Yes.
Knee deep, elbow deep, what would you say?
Forehead deep.
Forehead deep, okay.
It's a lot of work. I appreciate a lot more what these companies go through and why they need the size staff that they need in order to really make it work. But yeah.
So what has surprised you about putting together Dark Potential? I mean, or did anything surprise you about it?
Well, one thing I've learned over the years of doing business is that I don't actually know very much. And anybody who thinks they know a lot has just not realized they don't. I think that's what it is. I think true wisdom is realizing that you're ignorant in most of the things. So I'm becoming wiser in that. I'm becoming wiser realizing that there are going to be things that I will not expect. And so when I started Dark Potential, I had that mindset. I thought, you know what? I want to raise this much. I'm guessing how much it's going to cost, and then I'm going to make that even a little higher because there's going to be things that are going to surprise me. And I don't know what those things are, but I know there are going to be things. It's kind of like when you do your budget. You look at all your bills, you say, I pay this much, this much, this much, this much. Those are my fixed bills. And then I know I spend roughly this much on food, this much on this. And then I got to throw in this extra amount just for I have no idea what's going to happen in the future, so I need to have some money saved up to work for that. And thankfully the fundraising campaign went incredibly well. We raised way above what our goal was. And so I've had the extra money to have those mistakes or have those problems happen. And so I would say that most of it's been unexpected, but at the same time I expected it to be unexpected. So maybe that means that nothing was unexpected. But I really had no idea what I was doing. And I told everybody that. I made that clear. Like, I'm going into this, I'm like, I have an idea, but I really don't have any idea. And I'm going to learn it along the way. So I've learned what it's to work with concept artists, to work with sculptors. And then once the sculpts are done, to realize all the mistakes that are done for when it comes to casting. The sculpt looks great, but when it goes to casting, it doesn't work because of this, this, and this. So I've had to go back. I basically had to go back each time throughout the whole process. And I've learned more and more. So I've learned a lot. I know a lot more about miniature creation than I did 3 or 4 months ago, but I still have a lot more to learn. So it's been a very, very arduous process to get this all done. And on top of that, creating the rules at the same time has been a lot of work. A lot of it's been fun. Some of it hasn't been so fun, but I am looking forward to the end product.
As far as the miniatures, what type of production setup are you looking at? Spin casting, plastic vacuum, or plastic injection, I'm sorry.
We're definitely making metal miniatures, so it'll be the spin casting. We have a facility actually here in Ontario that does them already. They do all Reaper miniatures and they do a lot of other contract casting. So to start off, we're going to use them. So that's going to save us a lot of the trial and error because they already know what they're doing. They produce over 20,000 miniatures a week, and wow. So they have a ton of experience with it. And so he's the guy over at this place. It's Ratham is the name of the company. He's actually been the one where I've sent him the sculpts, and he's replied and he's talked to me and said, okay, here are your problems. And he's helped us to improve that whole process. And so we're starting to get the first ones made. So they're going to be metal miniatures to start, simply because the cost of making those is much lower. The per model cost is higher than plastics, but you're looking at a couple $100 to make a mold for a metal miniature and about $20,000 to make a mold for plastic miniatures. So obviously, only having raised $90,000, we don't want to spend half of that on 2 molds. Yeah. And then maybe they'll work out. And then you have to have sculptors who are really familiar with making sculpts for plastic miniatures. So that's going to come later. So definitely spin casting metal miniatures.
Okay. Now, as far as your sculptures, any names that we might have heard before? Or?
Probably not, actually. A lot of them are being done digitally. And then we have a guy actually nearby who's been sculpting as well. And so I don't think you'd recognize any of the names of those sculptors. We had a couple sculptors with a lot more experience, but they tended to be a little harder to work with because I had one, for example, who came forward and said, you know, this is how much I'll charge. And I said, how fast can you get it done? It's like in a couple months. And I said to him, like, 1 model in a 2-month period. He said, that's what you're going to have to get used to when you work with sculptors. I said, that's just a bunch of bull. You're telling me that Games Workshop, each of their sculptors, creates 1 miniature in a 1 or 2 month period. Like, they'd be out of business by now if that's the way it worked. I bet they have probably half a dozen sculptors who create most of their sculpts in a very short period of time. And that's what I have discovered. Sculptors can get their stuff done in a week or 2. In fact, they can get a couple done at the same time in a week or 2. But, and so a lot of the ones that had more experience tended to be that way. They're like, oh, I'll book you in 2 months from now, and then it'll take me a month or two to get a miniature done. And of course, our production schedule, that just wouldn't work with it. So unfortunately, that hasn't really worked. And so getting the right sculptors has probably been the hardest part of the whole process. But we're now narrowing that down. We have a few that we're working with that we're really happy with.
Well, it's interesting to hear that you're going with some digital 3D modeling, because initially when that technology came out, it was really good for vehicles and for certain aspects, but I think now it's actually gotten to the point with like 3D Coat is a great program for actually doing, you know, lizards and, you know, very, you know, natural looking types of textures and stuff. So it'll be interesting to see how your miniatures turn out.
Yeah, the technology has come a long way, and it's not so much on the 3D software, but the 3D printing that is important. If you have a really high resolution 3D printer, which we don't have when we hire out to a company, then they can take that super detailed digital sculpt and they can print it in such a way that you get all the details. I've had some 3D printers send me things that are just detailed because they're more for larger scale things. Yeah. But you get those that, they actually use these 3D printers for things as small as jewelry now, and for making molds for jewelry. So they're able to get that precision that the actual sculptors would normally be able to get to. Yeah. So there are advantages to digital sculpting now, but there's also disadvantages. It sometimes doesn't look quite as nice as a normal sculpt would. There's a bit more natural feel to a regular sculpt because it's not perfectly symmetrical, it's not perfectly smooth, it's got those little more realistic touches to it. But they're definitely good for producing your larger numbers of troops and things that don't need as super high detail as the characters and the commanders and your solos would need. I think we covered a lot. I hope, my main thing is I hope that more people will kind of do what we're doing. Even if you're a one-man show, sure, you're not going to create videos every day, that's fine. You're not going to be able to create tons of different videos of all the different games, you don't need to. And so it'd be, the more people creating videos, the better this community is going to get. And so I hope that we can inspire more people to do that.
Well, I agree 100%. Thanks, Matthew. I appreciate your time.
Well, thank you very much.